Good morning. I'm Belinda Harris, and today we're talking about something that can absolutely wear you down as a manager. And that is the employee who complains about everything. See, they don't like the new procedure, they don't like the old procedure, they don't like their workload, they don't like their coworker, they don't like the meeting, they don't like that you didn't have a meeting. And after a while, you start thinking, what do you actually want me to do? And if you manage people long enough, you are probably going to have an employee like this. And today, I want to talk about what you should actually do because ignoring it doesn't work. Getting irritated doesn't work. And telling them to stop being so negative probably isn't going to work either. And there's another side of this. You also don't want to become the manager who labels every employee who raises a concern as a complainer. So let's talk about the difference and what you do when complaining really has become a pattern. Now, before you decide that someone complains too much, listen. Because sometimes the employee who keeps complaining is actually telling you about a real problem. Like maybe the workload really is unreasonable. Maybe communication really is poor. Maybe a process really isn't working. And maybe there's conflict on the team that you haven't seen. As a manager, you don't want to dismiss legitimate feedback simply because you're tired of hearing it. So ask yourself, is this employee bringing me legitimate concerns repeatedly? Or are they repeatedly finding something to be unhappy about? See, those are two very different situations. And as a manager, you need to know which one you're dealing with. Now, the first thing you want to do is stop letting complaints become endless conversations. And this is where managers sometimes get stuck. The employee comes in your office and starts complaining, and you listen, and you listen, and you listen. And then 30 minutes later, you're still talking about the same thing. Then they come back 2 days later to do it again. You have to change the conversation. And one of my favorite questions is, what would you like to see happen? Or what solutions are you recommending? Now, we've moved from complaining to problem solving because I don't want you to just bring me problems over and over again. I want us to figure out what can actually be done about them. And sometimes the answer is nothing. Everything an employee dislikes isn't necessarily something the organization needs to change. The other thing that you want to do is look for the pattern. See, one complaint is not a pattern. 2 bad days are not a pattern. But if every conversation is negative, if every change is a problem, if every coworker is difficult, if every assignment is unfair, if nothing you do resolves the issue, now I want you to pay attention because at that point, the issue may no longer be the individual complaints. The behavior itself may be the issue. And that's when I think managers need to stop addressing every complaint as though it is an isolated event. You need to address the pattern. You might say, I've noticed that many of our conversations have focused on things that you're unhappy with. I absolutely want you to bring legitimate concerns to me. But I also want us to talk about how we can move towards solutions. See, that's a very different conversation than you complain too much. See, one attacks the person, the other addresses the behavior. The other thing that I want you to do is set a boundary. See, this part is important for your own self care as a manager. You are allowed to have boundaries. Being a good manager does not mean being available for every unlimited venting. You can listen, you can be empathetic, you can investigate legitimate concerns, you can help solve problems, but you do not have to spend hours every week having the same negative conversation with the same employee. At some point, you can say, we've discussed this concern and we've identified what can and cannot be changed. Unless there is new information, we need to move forward. See, that's not being dismissive, that's managing. And sometimes managers need permission to do that because you don't want to let one person's negativity become the team's every day. See, this is the part that managers really have to watch because negativity spreads. One person complains, then another joins in. Then someone who wasn't even upset starts thinking, well, maybe I should be upset too. And before you know it, complaining has become how your team connects with each other. That's a problem. That doesn't mean you demand that everybody be positive all the time. I don't believe in that either. People should be able to say when something isn't working. But there's a difference between a workplace where people can raise concerns and a workplace where complaining has become the primary form of communication. You want a workplace where people can say, here's the problem. Here's what I think would help. What can we do? See, that's productive. So if you have an employee who complains constantly, don't immediately shut them down. First, listen. Determine where there is a legitimate issue. Then start moving the conversation toward solutions. Look for patterns. Set boundaries when you need to. And if the behavior continues and begins affecting the team, address the behavior directly. Because here's what I want managers to remember: your employees deserve to be heard. But listening to your employees does not mean allowing one person's constant negativity to consume you or your team. That's part of self care at work for managers too. Protecting your energy, protecting your team, and creating a workplace where people can bring problems, but where we also work towards solutions. I'm going to thank you for spending this time with me this morning, and I will see you at work.